Should the New Orleans Saints consider trading one of their top 50 selections for a veteran wide receiver? We got that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? Welcome into this Wednesday episode of Locked On Saints, your daily podcast covering the New Orleans Saints, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks as always, making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. And don't forget that we are free and available on all platforms, including on YouTube as well. And I'm your host, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter, USA Today's Saints Wire, Tuesdays on Locked On NFL, and here with you every single Monday through Friday on Locked On Saints. And on today's episode, I want to answer the question whether or not the New Orleans Saints should consider trading one of their top 50 selections for a veteran wide receiver, maybe in addition to investing in a young rookie wide receiver, or maybe even in lieu of investing early in a young rookie wide receiver and pushing that back toward the back of the draft. Now, of course, it would all depend upon who the receiver is, who it is that they're going after, all that. So we're going to talk about three receivers today. San Francisco 49ers wide receiver Deebo Samuel, Seattle Seahawks wide receiver DK Metcalf, and Seattle Seahawks wide receiver Tyler Lockett. So that's going to be where we're going to dedicate today's episode, because I think one of those three options is a very, very good target for the New Orleans Saints, but two would not be good ideas. And we'll kind of break all of that down as we continue through. We'll get to top 25 day 2 prospects in tomorrow's episode. Wanted to have this sort of rookie trade or this trade veteran wide receiver conversation for today's show. So let's start off with Deebo Samuel, because he's the one that's really in the news, right? Wide receiver from the San Francisco 49ers, has absolutely thrived in that Kyle Shanahan system, liking things on Instagram, talking about if it's not $25 million per year, I don't want to hear about it. So he's looking to get paid. He's looking for a new contract. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of folks are kind of wondering about whether or not he's going to get moved from San Francisco. Are the 49ers going to be willing to pay him a contract that's going to pay him up to $25 million, even though he serves a, let's just say, non-traditional wide receiver role? He does a little bit of everything. You can line him up in the slot. You can line him up out wide. You can move him around, yes, but you can also utilize him out of the backfield. You can utilize him in the backfield. There's so many different ways that you're able to deploy Deebo Samuel, and that Deebo Samuel ends up being used, that it makes it a little bit tough to say that he deserves wide receiver 1 money when he's not the NFL's quintessential X receiver or wide receiver 1. So if he wants that kind of money, we kind of have to really shift his role. And if you shift his role, is he still going to be the same receiver that you're willing to move some of these potential assets for, or that he believes that he deserves to be paid to be like? So I think that there's an inherent issue here in terms of trading for a guy and then having to pay a guy like Deebo Samuel. There's two reasons why I would say that for the New Orleans Saints, the price would be too high. Because I imagine that this would be something that would involve at the least, a trade that's sort of built around the second round pick. Very likely they would want to push that to be built around the first round pick. I don't think that would be worth it for Deebo Samuel. And I know Deebo Samuel's a playmaker, but he's a playmaker in Kyle Shanahan's offense. So that highlights the second thing. So let's break down both of these pieces. Here are the reasons why I don't think trading for Deebo Samuel would be a good idea if you are the New Orleans Saints. And honestly, I would be cautious about it if I was just about any NFL team that's not a part of the Kyle Shanahan tree. Let's start there. He's a Kyle Shanahan product. He's making his money. He's picking up his yards. He's doing all the things that he's doing. He's making his plays in Kyle Shanahan's offense. If you take him out of that offense and then put him into a, let's say, more traditional West Coast offense, or an Eric Riel offense, or a spread offense, or a wide zone. Well, I guess a wide zone is a little bit more a Shanahan system anyway. But you add him to a system to where it doesn't necessarily end up highlighting what it is that you can highlight in a Kyle Shanahan offense. Does that change his role too much? And do you put him in a place where he is no longer able to be productive for you? So you're trading for what he looks like in a Shanahan offense to put him in a non-Shanahan offense and risk the potential drop-off in production that could come with that. Those of you that are listening or watching to the show, as Saints fans, you watched what happened when Kyle Shanahan was an offensive coordinator with the Atlanta Falcons and what happened when he left, right? That is the type of drop-off that I think that you would need to anticipate with Deebo Samuel. Can you actually put him in a role that makes sense for you? And yes, the New Orleans Saints have been able to build a similar type of role with someone like Taysom Hill, but that is built and predicated off of the tight end position, not necessarily the wide receiver or running back positions. So I think that there's something there to be said about having to sort of build out this new role for someone that you're trading assets to bring in, as opposed to somebody that you invested in the draft or something like that. And on top of that, would have to pay a new contract to. And then that gets me to my second point. Paying him his new contract when you already have a ton of money invested in wide receiver when it comes to Michael Thomas. I think that's one of the reasons why the rookie contract might be so appealing for the New Orleans Saints when it comes to investing in wide receiver this offseason, is that you don't want to have to put in another $20 million or so per year into that exact same position where you've already invested so heavily in one of your pieces, right? And perhaps the most important piece on your offense from the passing game standpoint. The other piece of that is that you're paying him all of that money to move him to a role that maybe doesn't make a lot of sense for him, because you're looking for him to be somebody that complements Michael Thomas and that is a field stretcher, right? That's what you're looking for in this offense. You're looking for a Devery Henderson type, a Robert Meacham type. Those are the guys that you're looking for. You're not necessarily looking for a Deebo Samuel type in this offense. So what are you going to do? Are you going to build around his strengths, or are you going to try to shoehorn him into a role that he hasn't been successful in? So all those things that you have seen that make you want to give up that draft capital, you're no longer going to see those things in your offense because you're asking him to do something different. So for me, I don't think Deebo Samuel makes a ton of sense. Now, the New Orleans Saints offense is absolutely predicated on maximizing talent, putting players in position to do the things that make them special. So that's very much what they would do. They would try to cater to that. But can you cater to that while you also have all these other players on offense that are playing those multiple positions? And can you justify doing that while also paying him upwards of anywhere between $15 to $25 million per year? I don't necessarily think so. So I pumped the brakes on Deebo Samuel, but he's not the only one that I pumped the brakes on. I pumped the brakes on DK Metcalf too. I'll tell you why as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. But before we get to that, I want to tell you about our friends over at Shady Rays, an independent sunglasses company that's giving you all of the quality of those $200 pair of sunglasses that you know and love and continue to lose and continue to break. Well, you're going to get that, but at a fraction of the price with Shady Rays. It means you're getting polarized lenses. You're getting well-constructed, durable frames. You're getting high-end premium finishes, all at a fraction of the price. I've got 2 pairs of Shady Rays to keep in my vehicle at all times. They are absolutely awesome, and I love them. They look good, they feel good, they wear well, and the best part about it is that I'm somebody that breaks sunglasses, loses sunglasses a ton. Well, thanks to Shady Rays, they have this insane protection program that you're just not going to find anywhere else. You lose your sunglasses, you break your sunglasses, let them know. They're going to send you a brand new pair. It's absolutely awesome, no matter what it is that happens to them. And if you try them and you don't love them, they'll also give you your money back as well. You'll pay absolutely nothing. So it's as simple as that. Plus, 10 meals are donated to help to fight hunger in America when you shop with Shady Rays. So exclusively for our listeners here on the Locked On Saints podcast and around the Locked On Podcast Network, I want you to head over to shadyrays.com right now and use the promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON. That way you're going to get 50% off of 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. That's the promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, for you to be able to get the best deal of the season. Again, 50% off of 2 or more pairs of Shady Rays sunglasses, backed by over 150,000 verified 5-star reviews. All right, family, continuing on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. Thanks again, as always, making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget to also go and check out that Locked On NFL YouTube page as well. Luke Braun and I, every Tuesday over on Locked On NFL, we have the live draft coverage all 3 days over there as well. So make sure you go and subscribe today. So we talked a little bit about Deebo Samuel and why I don't think that trading for Deebo Samuel would be worth the very likely asking price that would come out of San Francisco. Now I want to shift gears but talk about another NFC West team and DK Metcalf, and why I also don't think that the price would be worth it for DK Metcalf either, which is crazy to say because DK Metcalf is one of the absolute top premier wide receivers in the NFL. So when we talked about Deebo Samuel, one of the things that we talked about was taking him out of a system that complements him really well. He's got 2,598 receiving yards in that San Francisco offense, 550 rushing yards as well. So they utilize him in a bunch of different ways. I don't think that that's necessarily the same situation that you would find with DK Metcalf. I think DK Metcalf and his ability as an X receiver, right, as a wide receiver one, bona fide top number one option guy in an offense, is scheme versatile. So you take him away from Seattle and you're probably putting him in a better system and in a better situation than what he's going to be, than he has been there with no offensive line when he had Russell Wilson. Now he's got Drew Lock at this point, or whoever the Seattle Seahawks potentially draft in the first round if they go after Desmond Ridder, for instance. So now you look at him, a total of 3,170 receiving yards so far in his career, 29 touchdowns. And a lot of that production has come from the X receiver spot, the weak side spot, the split end spot. That's Michael Thomas's role. So my concern in terms of paying the very high premium that it would take to bring in a guy like DK Metcalf, as outstanding as that would be, is finding a way to pair him more adequately with Michael Thomas. Because then effectively you've got two X receivers who run similar route trees. I think maybe Michael Thomas's route tree is a little bit more expansive. And yeah, you can use Michael Thomas in the slot, but you're not going to use him there full time. And then you're just basically putting yourself in a situation to where you've carbon copied a couple of pieces. Now, any team that is lucky enough to have a Michael Thomas and a DK Metcalf on it organically at the same time, incredible, fantastic, absolutely. You find a way to get them the ball. But are you going to pay the high premium price? Well, that was rough. High premium price to get him into New Orleans to try to carve out a role for him? That part I don't know. Because we were talking about the high asking price for Deebo Samuel and how I think it would technically be unwarranted. When it comes to DK Metcalf, that's a warranted asking price to at least start with a first round pick this year. We just watched Devontae Adams get traded for a first and a second, as well as some future stuff. Now you've got a guy like DK Metcalf, who I put in a similar class at the top of the NFL when it comes to wide receiver. And so I would expect that either 16 or 19, obviously you would prefer to trade away 19, in that scenario would be the asking price from the Seattle Seahawks, and maybe even the second round pick as well. So is giving up two top 50 selections worth bringing in DK Metcalf? Sure, if you were just bringing in DK Metcalf to a clearly defined role, but bringing him into a sort of redundant role is one that I'm not necessarily too sure about. So for me, the trade for DK Metcalf, as exciting as it would be, as incredible as it would be to have Michael Thomas and DK Metcalf on the same team, on the same offense, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense and doesn't feel like something an NFL team would pursue when you have that split end X receiver role already taken care of. You're not going to move DK Metcalf to a Z flanker role. You're just not going to do that. You're not going to use him in the slot or full time, right? So you have all of that. Plus, you got to pay him. And that's the other piece to all of this too. It's just like with Deebo Samuel, the role that you're bringing him in for based upon what you have seen is not equal. And so therefore, what are you paying for? Are you paying for projection or are you paying for production? And in DK Metcalf's situation, you kind of be paying a little bit more for projection than you'd be paying for that plus 3,000 yards that he's already put together over his first three seasons. So for me, I don't really see it working out that way. And I think that instead, you want to go and find somebody that is clearly complementary to what it is that Michael Thomas brings you. There's no guarantee that Michael Thomas comes back 100% Michael Thomas. In fact, it's very unlikely, right? It's going to be 90, 95% at most, but you'll take that. And that's still better than, 30 other teams when it comes to wide receiver in the NFL. So finding a clearly complementary piece to him, I think, is a more productive use of this draft capital than trying to replicate his role, or bringing in somebody that has spent their entire NFL career so far replicating his role and then therefore not being able to sort of figure out how to equally balance or utilize both of them in complementary ways, right? You look at Jameis Winston, who is your starting quarterback in 2022, and you look at Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, the receivers that he produced with in Tampa, complementary pieces to one another with some slot options and with big tight ends and lots of tight end options. I think that's what you're looking to do. That's what you're looking to build. You're trying to find that way to get those two pieces that are effectively opposite one another, but that complement one another. And I don't think DK Metcalf brings you that. However, I do think that his teammate, Tyler Lockett, absolutely does. And there are three main reasons that I think that Tyler Lockett would be a great pursuit option for the New Orleans Saints if they decided to go the veteran trade market route for wide receiver. We'll list all three and then break it all down for you in terms of Tyler Lockett's fit with the New Orleans Saints as we continue on and wrap up today's episode of Locked On Saints. Now, before we talk about the potential fit for Tyler Lockett with the New Orleans Saints, I want to talk about the protein bar that is going to fit into your plans, whether it is that you're looking for some weight loss, maybe you're just looking to eat better, snack better, all of that. It's okay to snack. Just make sure that you're snacking well, right? Something that's sustainable. That's why I love these Built Bars. About 17, 18 grams of protein, 4 or 5 grams of sugar or net carbs, though, despite the fact that they're covered in 100% chocolate and have some incredible flavors, including the Built Bar Puffs, which is the world's first protein-infused marshmallow, which includes that brownie batter Built Bar that I keep telling y'all is absolutely phenomenal. Got some rave reviews the other day for the cinnamon churro one as well. And then you have the standard flavors or the standard bars, not the Built Puff ones with marshmallow, but your other bars that are, mint brownie, coconut, almond, cherry barcia got a rave review the other day as well. So you can go and check all these out. They're 5-6 bites. You're not having to power through an hour-long protein bar session or anything like that. And you don't have to regret the decision of purchasing protein bars and taking care of yourself. And to me, that's important. When I take care of myself, I want to feel good about it. I don't want it to be laborious. That's why I love Built Bars. So go and check them out for yourself. Don't just listen to me. Go and try them out. I'm going to help you out with it. Head over to Built.com. Use promo code LOCK15, LOCKED15. Use the numerals so you can get 15% off of your next order. Whether it's your first or your next, doesn't matter. Promo code LOCK15 for 15% off over at Built.com. Let's get it. Who Dat Nation, wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Saints with who I think would probably be one of the best trade targets, veteran trade targets for the New Orleans Saints, should they decide to go to the trade market to try to help at wide receiver a little bit more. So we've seen the Saints do this before, right? They were kind of in those talks with Odell Beckham Jr., potential trade talks. Then they were in the free agency talks with Odell Beckham Jr. as well. So now you look at what the New Orleans Saints have, and their draft capital gives them a lot of freedom, right? We've talked about the flexibility that they now have to be able to kind of move around, mobilize within the draft. They could also mobilize outside the draft if they can make decisions that they felt like were smart, right? That they felt like were wise decisions to make. And I think part of the wise decision thing is making sure you find somebody that's a complementary piece. It's about making sure that you find somebody that gives you what you need in terms of like contract flexibility as well. And both of those things for me, as well as one other piece that we'll talk about here in a moment, make a ton of sense when it comes to Tyler Lockett, the wide receiver from the Seattle Seahawks, who has played every game of the last 3 seasons, it looks like, 16 of 16. So I guess he missed maybe one game last year. Last year, he finished off the season with his third straight 1,000-yard receiving season, had 73 catches for 1,175 yards and 8 touchdowns, had 10 touchdowns just 2 years ago, has actually hit that 10-touchdown mark twice so far in his career. And he just played his last season at the ripe old age of 29 years old. So with the aging factor that's in there, that may be something that concerns you, but he's barely just a couple months older than Michael Thomas actually is too. So when I look at an opportunity or look for an opportunity to bring in a complementary piece that would operate opposite Michael Thomas, who would play your split end X number 1 receiver role, be your go-to guy, you're looking for somebody that packs enough speed to be a bit of a field stretcher, that can, run these deep crossing routes over the middle of the field that they love in the New Orleans Saints offense, that can run these dagger concepts, these sail concepts, these concepts that they really, really like, which necessitate some speed for the guys that are running clear outs in those situations. Dagger would be paired with somebody going, straight up while somebody is coming in. And then a, sail concept would be somebody going straight up while somebody is sort of sailing out 7 or corner. And so I think that when you look at somebody that fits that and that can run those routes and that has the speed, Tyler Lockett makes a ton of sense. So that's maybe point 1 of 3 when it comes down to why Tyler Lockett would make sense as a trade pursuit option. And that's about fit, right? He's scheme versatile and he fits your scheme. You don't really have to change anything that he does. You don't have to cater to his skill set. Everything aligns, right? With the exception of maybe 1 or 2 small things that you might have to change, which, Cody Burns and the other guys, they'll work on that part, right? Bob McNell, they'll all work on all that. But when it comes down to what he would immediately bring, there's an immediate fit there. It's kind of Emmanuel Sanders-ish in that way. The second thing would be the asking price. I think the asking price for Tyler Lockett would be considerably lower. If I'm being honest, I'd be willing, if I were, the GM of the New Orleans Saints, right? If I were Mickey Loomis in this situation, I'd probably be willing to move on from pick 49 in the second round to go and get Tyler Lockett, right? That takes care of the wide receiver portion for the early part of the draft. I can go offensive tackle and quarterback. I can go offensive tackle and safety. I can go offensive tackle, defensive tackle. I can go BPA in the first round that way, basically, right? That's what I mean to say. I can go offensive tackle and BPA. It opens that up for me. Then I can go back to wide receiver, get another young receiver on a rookie contract a little bit later. So the asking price just feels a little bit more appropriate for a Tyler Lockett than it does for a DK Metcalf or a Deebo Samuel, especially when I'm not confident that Deebo Samuel is going to have that same level of production outside of Kyle Shanahan's offense or a Shanahan, disciple, right? So when I sort of project that portion of it, I would say, yeah, a second round pick would be the cornerstone probably of what that trade would be. Maybe 120 or 161 goes with that. Maybe even a future pick for next year because you're kind of banking on some Sean Payton picks for next year as well. You'd be willing to make those moves. The other piece would be, I'd probably start low though. I'd start with 98 and say, hey, here's a top 100 pick in this year's draft that'll help you move back up into the first round if you want to, because they've got those, they've got a couple of second round picks or whatever. So I think that is the other piece that gives you something that you can utilize in that situation. So for me, the asking price just makes a little bit more sense for the New Orleans Saints for Tyler Lockett. The next piece is the contract, right? We talked about the fit. We talked about the trade sort of capital. Now the last piece is the contract. He's already extended or has a contract through 2025, and he's only going to count against the salary cap for a team that trades for him about $10 million this year, which means the New Orleans Saints don't have to do anything. They can just trade for him. They don't have to restructure his contract. They don't have to do anything with him. They don't have to extend him. They don't have to pay him more money. You don't have to give him a new contract like you'd have to do with DK Metcalf as well as Deebo Samuel, where you would be reinvesting in players that might fit with you. Whereas Tyler Lockett is the fit. You don't have to give up that much draft capital, right? You don't have to pay a premium for him, not at that position and not at his age and not in his role. And then you don't have to give him a new contract either. I mean, that makes it really, really easy, quote unquote, to make a move for a guy like Tyler Lockett. So that's why I think Tyler Lockett would be the best fit of the three options to end up in New Orleans if the Saints were interested in trading or hitting that veteran wide receiver market. Again, going the rookie market makes a ton of sense, right? You get the opportunity to get somebody that's going to have an immediate impact for you in the first round, even the second round if you wanted to wait a little bit. You end up getting the rookie contract for 4 years with the potential of a fifth-year option if you go in the first round. So everything is just a little bit more cost controlled, and you can draft specifically for your fit and what role you want to fill in your offense. So I think the rookie deal just makes the most sense. But if they decided that they wanted to go the veteran quarterback or wide receiver route, those are three options. Not the only three options, but those are three options. If you have other options, let me know. We can break those down as well. You can let me know if you're watching on YouTube in the comments, or you can shoot me a tweet over at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter. And of course, we have our Locked On Saints Facebook group as well that you can throw that into. And we'll talk about some of those other guys too. I mean, there's some interesting young prospects that just have been stuck in situations where they haven't been able to really thrive yet because they're behind other wide receivers. Look at the Ravens wide receiver crop, for instance. That's an easy one to be able to pick at if you wanted to go ahead and invest in somebody that was recently drafted. You might have to give a new contract to here soon, but you can kind of cost control that in terms of seeing what their role is in your offense first and then building a contract off of that. So we'll break some more of those down as we continue on. But tomorrow, top 25 prospects for the Saints in day 2, strictly by fit, not necessarily a top 25, best prospects that could be available day 2. That's hard to project. We're just going to look at New Orleans Saints fit. Christian Watson's going to be on that list. I think I might have a little bit of a surprise on that list, and then we'll look at a couple of other options for the Saints on day 2. So we'll break that down as we continue on here on Locked On Saints. I appreciate you as always for making us your first listen of the day every day here on the show. Don't forget to go and check out the Locked On NFL Draft podcast as well. They've had some great guests recently, and it's only going to get better. And of course, we have the NFL Draft right around the corner. So you're going to want to make sure you're getting all of that inside information over the Locked On NFL Draft podcast with Eric Crocker and Ryan Tracy. As always, I appreciate y'all so much making me a part of your day and a part of your routine for everything you need around your New Orleans Saints. In between these episodes, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you living. Let me know how your mom and them. And trust Who Dat Nation. I'll holla at you.